We cover it all on the Hype Hour. All right, so today we have an incredible, a multi-talented guest on the show. We have Keith from the Good News Podcast, man. What's up, man? How's everything going?
I'm doing good, man. You did good for the second time. I'm gonna let everybody know you did it 2 times. You ain't even keep no secrets around here.
I pushed it, man. So, man, we've been chopping it up way before even this cool little podcast thing that we're doing right now, everything live. So tell us about, just your day, man. How's it been?
It's been a good day, man. Just attacking. I have this to-do list that I pull up every single day. So I try to make sure I, knock as many things off that to-do list as I can. And today I was able to really get some things done as far as guerrilla marketing. We talked a little bit about getting some flyers, and we about to go on this guerrilla marketing campaign and try and do some things on college campuses to really get the brand out there. So
that's sick,
a lot of stuff like that done today. It's a good day. And then we made it out here. Only took like 3 hours, but we made
3
it.
hours. That 405 traffic, man.
The
craziest thing is, like, I have people on this show and I'd be asking them, like, okay, what is your, daily routine? Nobody got a daily routine. I'm like, well, what are you doing? You know what I mean? So it's great to actually have somebody on the show today that is actually doing something where they have a routine or something like that. So
yeah, every day is different, but it definitely starts off like, what do I need to do? So I guess that's the routine, just looking at that to-do list and like, all right, I can attack this today.
And going through it. Okay. Yeah. Well, we're going to hop right into it, man. So podcasting, right? So where did you start? Like, what was like the catalyst to, Keith starting, podcasting?
Interesting. Really, I tried to do like this coaching business thing. I was really good at just helping people get through life situations, and a lot of people call me for advice. So I was like, let me start this like coaching type situation. But I got tired of, meeting people, and I'm like, man, maybe if I start like a radio show or something, they could just listen instead of me having to go find them. And then they kind of just carried on from there. But started in my room, man, just I used to, on my cell phone, I didn't have no microphones or nothing. And I would call in basically on the guest line, this platform I was using. And that's how I would host the show, on the guest line, actually. Instead of having like an input-output situation, I would just call on the guest line and answer it on my computer, and I would be in the show. And there it was.
That's crazy. I mean, a lot of times you hear about people starting their businesses, from their home. First it starts with an idea, and then it elevates to something greater. And so I think a lot of people, like in the podcast world and even coming into the podcast world, they're a bit intimidated, right? Like they're intimidated by, they think it's so much work, so many things. I mean, there's a lot of work with anything that you start, but what are like some of the things that you learned along the way that you just became a part of your toolbox?
I think before that, I had a good idea of just starting where you at. Like, I think people try to have this extravagant beginning because they kind of want to skip, a lot of the minor steps, but it's something you can't skip, and that's experience. And so, I was like, well, if I suck now, it's better that I start off sucking anyways. So by the time I get good, I'll have better resources. So I think just already accepting that I wasn't going to be that good at the beginning. And that allowed me to not really care about how good I was. That allowed me to just get started without having like the fear of like sucking, because I felt like, well, that's part of the process.
Yeah.
So, that just kind of what got me started. And I just like, this is pretty easy. You do it once a week, 30 minutes, and, you'll get better. I just had that mentality. I'm going to get better over time. That's really what the biggest thing.
Yeah, a lot of people have a fear of like speaking, right? And engaging with people. I mean, they say that speaking in front of like people is like on one of the top list of
like fears.
Yeah, fears,
it is.
Yeah.
And
so did you ever have any of those fears, or?
My mom always tells me I should talk about this more, but I actually grew up with a major speech impediment. I stutter really bad, and I'm actually, was diagnosed later in my life with Tourette's and tic disorders.
Wow.
So, that allowed me to kind of, when I was younger, it really made me stutter really, really bad. So I actually went to school. In 10th grade, I decided I'm going to go and learn how to talk. So I'm going to get a degree in communications. Of course, ignorant, not knowing that communication is so much deeper than how you speak. But not knowing that was my intent to correct, my speech. And then my mom always said, this was meant to be. But of course, I don't see it as that. But that was one of the things I really overcame, was my own speech impediment by doing this. So, but I've always been, one to attack what I'm not good at, or if I feel like I shouldn't be doing it, then, or, I can't do it, then I'm going to try to do it.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's amazing. I mean, I think that just embracing our fears sometimes, can be one of the hardest things, but one of the most liberating things in life is being able to actually embrace certain things that you might not think that, or at least society makes you think. I mean, when you think about like having a speech impediment, all these things are told to you, you know what I mean? And so being able to use that as like a superpower and going off and building your own, network station and, even chopping up before we hopped on this podcast is, you have other, a podcast that you syndicate, like they use you to, to
outlet.
Yeah, as an outlet. And so going into that, like, what do you think, like at the beginning stages of a podcast, what do you think is like important? What are like 3 things that you would say is like most misunderstood when it comes to like building your own podcast?
I think the first thing is longevity. Like it's it's a marathon. So I always say there's 3 stages to podcasting. At the beginning, there's the beginning stage where everyone listens because it's new and people they're going to support you. If you start a t-shirt company right now, all your friends are going to buy a t-shirt. But then when you come out with that second line of t-shirts, not so many friends are going to buy it because but if you keep it up consistently over time, they'll be like, okay, this person is really doing it. Then they'll buy another one. They'll come back around. So I think with podcasting, you start off, you may get 1,000 people listen. Then the next one, like I had 200. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And it's, people are past the point of excitement. And then, you level out over a few episodes. Now you maybe get like 300, 400 or whatever the numbers are. I think understanding that is a big, a big part of it. Like, you're going to start off high because people are excited to support you, and then you got to turn them supporters into fans. And that is a different transition. When you have fans, that's when you can really, really start to monetize things and move in a different direction.
And you talked a bit about like this idea of, structure, right? In a sense that structure is actually not something that the podcast community is really attuned to. And so like, what are your thoughts on like somebody out there that's trying to create a podcast? Like what kind of, advice would you give them as far as, the basic layout of like a podcast?
There's one thing that keeps people engaged more than anything, and that's fun. I think having fun is no matter what the content is, having fun with it, people can relate to that. So I guess going deeper, just being relatable into whatever topic you are. I think niche podcasts are the most successful because you have, a market that they're not going to get this information from many different places. And if you can do that, I think that you'll see a lot more success, in the podcast game. Like you said, there is no format to this. Like if I ask a person, like, what's the best way to like formulate a podcast? Like, it's not like an essay where you have an intro, body, and conclusion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can literally, I always tell people end a podcast on a high note. Like good TV episodes, they never end with you actually know what's happening. They end so you got to come back the next time. So I always recommend, end on a high note. Like, you know what? We're going to have to finish this when we come back. It just kind of creates the sense of, I want more. I think what a lot of podcasts do is they conclude it at the end. And then the sense of, coming back is not, it's just not as impactful. So, those are some things, length is a big important thing. Some people want to talk for 2 hours. It's like, okay, I hope you got something good to talk for 2 hours.
Not everybody want to hear that 2-hour sermon that you got in there.
What do you listen to for 2 hours?
Yeah.
What do anybody listen to for 2 hours? I don't listen to nothing for 2 hours. I listen to books all the time, but not 2 hours. It's very rare. So, thinking about your content, should you be an hour? Should you be 30 minutes? Honestly, there's successful podcasts that are 2 hours long. There's successful podcasts that are 30 minutes long. There's successful podcasts that's 45, an hour. It's really about, content is not really the biggest thing. It's having a niche more so and just staying consistent in marketing.
Yeah.
Got to market yourself.
I agree. And so like even diving in even deeper, for someone that's starting a podcast, what are some equipment and tools that they can use at the basic level? And then can you walk us through getting to kind of the higher level of things? Yeah.
So I got my station manager here with me for the Good News Sports. He managed the Good News Sports Network. over at the Good News. And we were just talking about this yesterday about Anchor. We were telling people about, like, if you really, really want to do it, you can do it on Anchor. Yeah. And you don't need any equipment. All you need is your cell phone. I started, it wasn't on Anchor, but I started on my cell phone. And you can go as easy as getting a small mixer and then getting some mics. You know, I don't recommend the Snowball. That's not my... I just don't recommend that one. Thing. That's the one everyone gets for some reason. The Snowball or the Blue Yeti, that's like the most common first round mics. I'm not opposed to it, but I think that you can probably get something more bang for your buck. You know, get some MXLs, get some mics that, you know, are really going to, don't get those, you know, multi-directional mics that's not going to really work in your best benefit. You want to get mics that are dynamic microphones. I always recommend, so anybody listening to this, dynamic microphones over compressor microphones. Compressor microphones are good for music. Yeah. You know, and there's only one person, or it's made to pick up everything in the booth. Versus dynamic mics, and you know this, are made to just pick up what's right in front of it. And if you're having a conversation, you don't want the mic picking up different voices from different places around the room. Then you're going to get a lot of feedback. It's going to cause, you know, bad sound quality. So get you a good dynamic microphone, you know, and get a couple of them. Anywhere from $100 to $150. Go ahead and invest in a couple of microphones. Get you a small Behringer or something like that. A Yamaha mixer, 4 channels, if anything, 4, or at least make it be 8 channels, but 4 microphone inputs. You could do a whole lot with just those items, and that may cost you, we're looking at maybe $300, $400. Yeah. But that's a small investment for, you know, some good things you're going to need. And it probably come with a pair of headphones. So you got those things, you're ready to rock, honestly.
Yeah, and I think in the day and age of preset, I mean, I call it the preset age, but pretty much, you know, like getting past the preset age and being able to start to engineer, right? I mean, I think you have to kind of build up a technical skill or whatever in order to, you know, just it doesn't take like so much, but it takes enough for you to understand programs and understand, you know, what you need to do in order to, you know, link everything together, you know.
And I think you get to a point where you start outsourcing, maybe you don't want to do it or whatever the case may be, but it's definitely a good idea. When people come to the studio all the time, they say, hey, do you recommend renting out a studio or should I just invest in my own equipment? I say, invest in your own equipment. Like, you can never beat that. Yeah. You know, it just depends on what rate and how much time you're going to put into learning it. Totally. It's what's going to make the result.
And what do you think is like the next step as far as, you know, like, you know, quality of, you know, what you use or whatnot? Like, why would you upgrade? You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure that you've probably upgraded from what you started with to where you are now.
Yeah. I mean, over time, you got to get better. So, and then you require more, you learn more. You definitely want to upgrade maybe your microphones at a certain point, depending on what you want to do. But sometimes you don't need to upgrade anything. If you can start off, like I said, with those decent mics and that decent mixer, that small mixer that may cost you $100, man, you can go a long way. I still use the stuff from my very first investment. That's what we use to. When we do remote locations. That's from my very first. I think it was almost $800 investment I made the first time, and it came with just a bunch of stuff in the package. But it came with a small mixer. It came with 2 microphones or a couple microphones. I still use that same equipment today when we're out of the studio. Wow. So that stuff, like, it works. And it works forever.
Yeah. Okay. And then now moving to more of like the content. A lot of people ask the question of like, well, where do I get guests? You know, and like what has been something that has helped you siphon off and get, you know, different guests?
I would say this about guests. If your show is guest heavy and guest based, it's not going to be successful. I think it's your show, so people want to see you on there. You know, you think about some of the most successful podcasts or radio shows. Ben Shapiro, I know you've heard of him. He never has guests. He don't even take phone calls or nothing. He's by himself. He's one of the most successful podcasters that exist today. I mean, he's a millionaire, and you know, he's always by himself. So guests, I mean, they come and go. I mean, you can run out of guests, but I just don't think if it's guest based, you're going to run out of guests really quickly. Versus just having guests come as you find good guests. So if you say, "Oh, I need a guest," I think that's the wrong approach versus saying, "Oh, I have a good guest to put on the show." So I think making your show based around you or your co-host is the first place to go. And then when you find a good guest, that's when you bring them on versus making your show about guests.
Mm.
That's my personal opinion.
I like that a lot. I mean, I
Yeah.
think branding is really important, and I think consistency, like with the branding, right? I mean, it's like when you go to your favorite pizza spot or you go to your favorite, food spot or whatever, you know that when you go there, you're going there for the way the pizza tastes, which is somewhat of the brand, and then the consistency of being able to get that same type of quality every single time, in a way that that you're going to get it without having to, it's not like, there's a partnership between another company that's, dictating how consistent they are. The consistency is based on, the restaurant itself.
The brand, like know what you're going to get when you go to McDonald's or In-N-Out, or should I say In-N-Out. You know you're going to get something. A quality burger, know. So I agree with that.
Okay. And then so like you talked a bit about marketing, right? So like what you talked about the guerrilla market strategy that you guys are going after right now. And so, I think a lot of people don't really understand, the idea and the understanding of being able to market themselves. As we talk about branding, we talked about social media and, can you give us a little bit of perspective on that?
So I love social media. I think it's a great tool. I think it's definitely allowed us to connect more than we ever had before. But the truth is, it's actually kind of like messed up our thought process on how we're viewed. Now we look at how many views, how many likes do I have, how many impressions, and that takes away from the traditional ways of marketing. I think that we just rely on it. If we feel like we put a post out and we get 100 likes, everybody liked it. We're booming. Like, we're doing great now. And it's like, yo, that's not that good, honestly. Versus, think about a billboard that you see. How many cars are seeing that billboard, as they're driving by? And the truth is, social media, what's the last 3 things you liked? You can't remember.
Yeah.
Right? Sure. I mean, and think so somebody might like your stuff and move right past it. You know what I mean? Times friends and call me and say, hey, do you see what I posted? I was like, I think so. Let me go back and look. Now I liked it and everything. I may even commented on it.
Yeah.
But I don't remember. So those traditional ways of marketing are still heavily, heavily useful. And I think that the big major companies know that. And that's what this is such a new market. Like I said, podcast market kind of exists through social media now. But taking the background and say, oh, let's do these traditional ways of marketing, I think you'll see a heavy, heavy impact. Like I said, whether it's just putting up signs around or just going to talk to people straight up, say, hey, do you listen to podcasts? Subscribe to my podcast. Just like if you were a rapper, said, hey, you like music? Check out my CD. It's the same process as I was talking about. This is the new music industry, and you must treat it exactly the same as far as your approach. Even though the format, there's no format right now, but the process of getting people to recognize your stuff and marketing is always going to be the same across the board. I don't think that's ever going to change because people have eyes and people drive, and that's just what it is. Now we just have a new way, which is social media, but you cannot neglect those old ways because those are huge, and not everybody's on social media at all the time.
Totally.
So it's just, you're missing out on a large market by not using those traditional forms.
Yeah, thinking about like that with your community. I mean, a lot of times, like even as we're talking about branding and really with a brand, what you're doing is you're creating a community, right? Yeah. I mean, and so I think a lot of people look past their community when they're starting a podcast. They look at more so, are the brand and the community together? Looking past that, they're more like, well, how do I get started? It's like, well, do you have friends? I mean, do you have, family members? Mm-hmm. Do you have, starting small, we think so much of a bigger platform or whatever the case is, but everything that's great had to start somewhere.
I mean, you got to think about it. Like if there's 1,000 people in your area, that's 1,000 listeners. And me and Michael was talking about it before, like just how musicians, they get their city gets behind them, then they blow up. They don't blow up and then their city gets behind them. That's hardly ever happens. Yeah. They're pushed out because of their city is behind them. So if you get the people in your inner circle and then in your outer circle, just that's within your reach first, and you get them to become fans, you don't even have to do the work. It becomes, you don't really have to. They do it for you.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like just how you wear Nike or whatever we wear in Polo. You know, if you wear something like that, you're advertising for that company for free because you like it. And you paid for that Nike shirt that you got on your chest, and you're advertising for them at the same time.
That's true.
So if you can get people behind your brand to do the exact same thing, it'll blow up just the same as any other brand.
Do you think content is important?
No. It all depends on you. It's everybody has their thing. So it's like saying, like, if you make music, doesn't matter if you make country or hip hop. It depends on who you are and what you're putting out. So if you have a country, base, or you have a hip hop base, then content matters to your audience. But I think a lot of times we try to appeal to our audience instead of trying to make something and then, create an audience. We just like, oh, what all my friends like to hear? I'm going to talk about that. But if you like anime, start a podcast about anime. Even if your friends don't necessarily like it, there's a whole anime community that will.
Very true.
So there's nothing wrong with niches. I think those are the most successful.
Yeah, I feel like for me, like when I first started the Hype Hour podcast, it started with just, okay, well, what am I good at? And what am I good at as far as, have an understanding and expertise in, that other people might not have an expertise in. I mean, and literally, putting it together, and me and you went back and forth. I sent you like my intro and stuff from the very beginning. And I would say for sure it's like the content, really comes from inside. Like what you feel is hot, other people are going to feel is hot too, because there's definitely a demographic for that.
Yeah.
And so I definitely think that's a big thing. And so even moving on to more of the understanding of content, what are your thoughts on, like creating a team that can help you with your content?
Vital. Vital. I mean, I've never seen anybody successful by themselves. One rapper, who didn't have a team or didn't have a group of people that's, helping them push the brand or the idea, or you got to have you got to have a team. I mean, I'm definitely looking, like I said, Mike Hill's here today, and he's an integral part of, the Good News team. He runs the sports sector. Like I said, we have 42 personalities on our network.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people to handle, and we're growing right now. We're adding shows. So, by 3 weeks from now, that's going to be easily 50 people moving forward. So if you don't have a team, you can't even grow at a certain rate. It's the old saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, you got to go with others. That's the only way to actually cover way more ground at a faster rate. He's talking to somebody on the left, I'm talking to somebody on the right. And then it's kind of like you want 100% of work to be done. Well, you can have 100 people doing 1%, or you can have one person doing 100%. If you have 100 people, and I'm just using the metaphor,
I love
doing 1%, nobody feels overwhelmed. Everybody feels they can keep this up. What happens is burnout happens a lot when you don't have a team. You're trying to edit, and then you're trying to do the Instagram, then you're trying to. It's like you can't be the quarterback and the receiver, and calling the plays and blocking. It's impossible. Yeah. You can't do all that on the field. You got to have a team. And this is a big, it's a strategy. Winning is a strategy. You can't just get out there and play and then see what happens. Like it is a strategy to this, and having the right team and building the right team, and having a team that's committed to winning and making sure that people are not there just to ride the wave and to see what happens.
Yeah. Because
nothing will if we don't make it happen.
And what is your team composed of?
So we have now 6 people on our administrative team. We have Mike Hill. He has a show on the Good News Sports called Courtside Radio. He's also the Good News station manager for the sports. We also have Jackie. She is the Good News station manager for our talk station. And Jackie's actually been with me for the longest of time. She started with me in the house.
Wow.
And through all this time, she's right there. She's been every step of the way. So she's like,
shout out to Jackie.
Shout out to Jackie, man. I owe her a major. She's been just as important as I have been to this process. Then we have Kirsten. She's our brand manager, and she helps with a lot of our promotions and stuff like that. And we just brought on an event manager, our event coordinator, because we've had so many things going on. And then there's myself. and we make things happen.
Nice.
I miss anybody? I didn't miss nobody. Huh? I didn't miss nobody. And then we have Dash, who is our official DJ of the Good News Radio. And I mean, just all the events, everything we've ever needed, you always need a good DJ.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the vibe's not going to be right. So he's been another integral part of what we've been doing. So, when we get all together and we make things happen, I mean, it's incredible. And I think that I have a team that everybody has literally said, I'm all in, and proved it over and over again. So now the whole team right now, we're all reading the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. So we're doing that as a team because we have to lead 42 people.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? So it's not just, we have to lead, we have 16 shows, between the two stations, 42 personalities, 2 out of state. We have to learn how to become better leaders. Mm-hmm. So it's also making sure the team is getting better too. We're not just here because that won't move us forward, but getting everybody on par and growing everybody and being intentional about getting better, and then having to cut people out to prove to yourself and the team that,
if you ain't pulling no weight,
we gotta go.
Yeah.
And it just keeps everybody holds each other accountable when that happens. It's like, yo, hey, you gonna be up out of here because it ain't about Keith no more. It's been most people don't even know who I am. I've had people come up to me and ask me, hey, how do I get on the Good News? And I'll reference them to Michael or Jackie.
Nice. Yeah.
So it's beyond me at this point. People may not even know who I am or never even meet me. But the reality is that that's what's required. You got to have a good team. You got to have a good team. You got to have a good leader.
Yeah. Is it important, like when you're creating these podcasts and even when you hear some of the podcasts like on your network, is it important for them to kind of have an idea of what they want to do? I mean, I know some podcasts, they just start off with just like, hey, I'm just going to rant and I don't know where that's going. But like when you have like a really great podcast like put together, do you think that it's important to kind of have like an understanding of like what you're going to kind of talk about, or how do you?
So being prepared for your show is definitely a major thing. I believe every show on our network pretty much has a script. And I think that comes in a large part of the type of shows that we accept into our network. Most shows that are on our network were already podcasts, and we look at less about their content, less about their quality, but more about their effort and heart. We got shows that started at the closet. We got shows that were meeting up from 50 miles away, meeting up in the middle every week to make a show happen. Meeting at a place that has Wi-Fi so they can record. So I think it's really for us has been the type of shows that we get, and then we can fix all those little things. Yeah, but as long as you got the commitment, we'll work with you, and that's where we go. Off of more than anything, it's like you committed to this process. Because we can fix a lot of those things. We can have. That's what we're here to do. We've been doing this for so long. We built a community around it. You'll learn. Like you sit there and talk to Michael, he'll look at your show, and he's implementing the thing now with the Good News Sports. It's like shows are rating other shows. Okay, what do you think about? Okay, we got Hoops Talking over here, and then we got Sports Talk with Mark. What do you think about his show? What do you think he did well? What do you think he did bad? So now the community is helping each other, get through these processes and getting better. It's not, like I said, it's not about me no more. It's really about the culture that we built.
That's great, man. I mean, I love that. I mean, just the idea of one, having a network where it's more of a community and you're able to source, from each, person and get that feedback, I think is really important. So moving on to what people want to know, right? It's like, how do you get paid, and how is there a way to get paid? Or
ain't no way to get paid, man. You're gonna be broke forever doing podcasting. No, there's 4 main ways that I've seen be most successful and that the biggest podcasters done. Like I said, I think there's 3 people I can point out right away: Amy Schumer, Joe Budden. More than that, I'm sorry, Amy Schumer, Joe Budden, of course Joe Rogan, and Ben Shapiro. Kim Commando, that's 5. So 3 to 5. These people have podcasting, like literally, they are the leading, I guess you can say in our type of reach, they're the leading podcasters. And when I say that, it's because they're making the most money and they're doing the most. Now, Ben Shapiro, he podcasts every day. Let's just start there.
Yeah.
Is anybody putting that kind of work in?
Wow.
I doubt it. Joe Budden, he was already famous and he was already known before being on the air or talking and just disrupting things, and talking crazy about people. So he had the hip hop community already behind him. He was famous already. Amy Schumer, same thing. She's a comedian. She's an actress. Spotify gave her a $1 million deal. Spotify gave Joe Budden $1 million deal. We're going to see these happening more and more. Believe that. So I think the bigger payout is coming. It's just that nobody knows what's happening. People are just figuring it out. People are just finding out what podcasts are. People are just getting hip on podcasts. So, I think those are like I said, that's where it's going. We're seeing that happening. That's where it's going. Ben Shapiro, his podcast is syndicated on live radio.
Wow.
Everywhere. He don't even take guests. Like I said before, he's by himself. So we see that happening. So obviously that's the great potential. You can get signed a deal just like a music deal, whether it's like we talked earlier, it could be, hey, music deals go, hey, you 2 album deal. Now it's like, okay, we want 3 seasons of a podcast deal. We'll give you $3 million like Mr. Joe Budden got. Totally. So that's the bigger thing. I would say the more traditional ways right now, one, obviously advertisement. Let's get that out the way. But I would like to tell people early in advance, that's not the way you're going to get it because people hate to be sold to, period. People don't like advertisements. So even if you have an hour podcast, how many ads are you going to fit in there?
Yeah.
Without people tuning out. So anywhere from 2 to 4 podcasts, 2 to 4, 2 to 4 advertisements, you're kind of like maxed out at that point. So even if you got, $50 to $100, you making $400 an episode, great. But, you can't survive off of your podcast. It's maybe making some money, but you ain't, you're not about to go buy a house in Calabasas off of, $1,600 a month. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So for real.
It's true.
So you have that, but it does make money. It is monetizing, which I would like to implement. And just, I'm gonna use that as an example. We have one of our shows and it kind of started to trickle over. It was like, let's start having our show. So we implemented on one of our shows, they do $5 shout outs. They have a segment of their show where they do, hey, these are our $5 sponsors for the week. And they have 4 spots. Now they're making $20 a show. It's a way to start. So you don't have to start, $5 shout outs, 10 seconds, boom, move on to the next one. Cool. That's just the easy way to do it. Live events and live shows. If you're good enough, and like I said, podcasts are not about the audio, it's about the brand itself. Live events. 85 South, 85 or 805. Is it 85 or 805? I think it's 85 South. They've done a great job. They sell out everywhere. Everywhere.
Wow.
They sell out stadiums. They are selling out. It's DC Young Fly, Carlos, and what's the other guy, Chico Bean. They're really known for wilding out, but also being on social media. But they sell out everywhere. So are they making money? They've monetized their podcast because obviously they sell out shows. Merchandise. If you have a good brand and people support it, like anything else, it doesn't matter what you put on a t-shirt. If it's something that they like, they're going to represent it. I was in Forever 21 the other day, and it was just a white sweater with cup of noodles on it. And they're selling it for $45. I said,
45.
It got cup of noodles? I love cup of noodles.
Yeah.
So because of that, right, it's right. The cup of noodle is $1. But the sweater is $45.
Yeah.
So that lets you know it's not about what's in the cut. It's about the brand itself. There's no noodles in the sweater. There's not happening.
It didn't come with the
sweater. It didn't even come with a cup of noodles, which should at $45. But the fact that the brand was on there, just the fact like when you buy a white shirt, it may be $10. If it has Nike on it, it increases to what? 30?
Yeah.
So merchandise, is another big way. Those are really the 4 ways that I've seen be most successful. As far as monetizing it, there you have it, you know, and getting paid to show up and speak at places because now you've grown yourself as a personality. It's not just your podcast you're building. You're also building yourself. See, because Joe Rogan can be on somebody and they'll say, it's Joe Rogan from the Joe Rogan Experience. See, it's not about his podcast. Now it's about him.
Yeah.
So understand when you're on air, Michael is actually a good example. He gets called to be on so many podcasts all the time. People love him because he's a big sports guy and he talks sports. They'll listen to the show. And it's 5 guys on the show, but they call him because of who he's become on the show. So it's the show is what you do, but who you are on the show still goes very long. You can be flown out like, hey, we want to hear you, talk about, we like the show. We like how you speaking on it. We want you on our platform. So it goes so far, and people pay for that.
Yeah, for sure.
People pay for your presence.
I think a lot of times people, when they're thinking about podcasts, it's a misconception of, oh man, like you said with the advertising and all those things, but being able to put yourself on another platform where, your voice is actually being appreciated, like when you bring up the shows and the events, it's kind of like, yeah, people want you on those shows and events because they've been listening to your podcast. And it's like, oh, you put the face to it,
Exactly.
And one thing that I've tried to explain to a lot of people that get into podcasts is, it's what it is just an extension of like your, of course your brand, but it's an extension of you. People are now valuing that person that's on that show. You know what I mean? Like in a sense of, oh wow, like I was on this show and people love to talk, you know what I mean? And you can also, I think the other value is, you can also learn a lot. I'm sure like on some of these, podcasts, it's like one that the person listening is learning, but you're also learning too, because, some of the people that you might have on the show are, educated in their field, and they're giving you all this knowledge. And the more you learn, the more you can use that as leverage to get to the next place as far as, whatever that might be. So, yeah.
I think people take the potential out of it really fast. And they just try to, it's not, they don't think about potential. They think about, what can I get right now? And then it may cost you money to even make the podcast. But the more interesting thing is, what do you do after you record it and edit it and put it out? Like, I think people think the work is just getting it done. Once I do the podcast, I'm done working. And it's like, no, we're just getting started.
Yeah, you said most people don't even make it to episode 18, right?
18 is the sweet spot, baby. 18 is the sweet spot. Even when we sign shows, we look at how close are you to 18?
This is the 18th show, actually.
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations,
which is
my
crazy.
brother. Hey, man. Hey, let's give him a round of applause. Hey, you already know that's the sweet spot.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you right now, man, this is a lot of times it's the breaking point. And a lot of times it happened before this. But the breaking point, because it's past the point of excitement now.
Yeah.
Like, it was exciting when you first started, but now it's like, what else can I do? Now you got stuff like this going on. This right here, what's happening, this is what makes the difference between people who become successful in their podcasting, I think, and ultimately, or have an opportunity to become successful, and the people who are just recording audio.
Yeah.
What did you do outside of the studio? What do you do that's a little bit different? Having live audience shows. We had so many live audience shows. I mean, I remember Courtside Radio, they did a month. So a whole month, for 4 weeks, every single week, they were out doing the show outside of the studio. Wasn't even in the studio.
Wow.
Going into the public, remote shows. Those things matter. That's guerrilla marketing. You got to get out of the studio.
Yeah. Totally.
So that's the big, when an artist drops an album, what do they usually do? After they drop an album, they tour the album. So when we have a season or when we drop a podcast, we don't necessarily tour it. I mean, we just say, all right, listen to it. And then we go back. We don't come back to it for 7 days, and it's like, it's going to require a 7-day effort. You should be every day saying, hey, listen to my podcast. Hey, my podcast dropped on Tuesday. It's Thursday. Friday comes. Don't forget to listen to my podcast I dropped on Tuesday. Saturday comes. Hey, still available right now on Tuesday. Great show. Hey, Sunday. You're going to get listens because you keep telling people to listen. What happens is we drop the podcast on Tuesday and we expect everybody to listen to it on Tuesday. And then we don't talk about it again till
you get that
the
big
new episode.
peak, and then it just is like
nobody listens for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
Because you don't put it out there like that. And you look at movies, they'll campaign before the movie comes out, and after the movie comes out, they're acting like the movie ain't even came out yet. It'll be out for a month, and they'll still be getting them same commercials.
Interviews,
it's like, bro, like this movie been out. I'm tired of seeing the commercial. I've seen it already. So you just think about that approach. You take the same approach as the bigger companies do. I mean, or at least the stylistic approach. Do the same thing they're doing. I mean, that's already laid out. There's no secret to that.
Yeah.
There's no secret to that.
Wow. Yeah, man. I mean, I think just in general, as you mentioned, just the podcast audience and the community growing and growing. I think it is a great time to be alive right now. But a great time to start like a podcast if you have things to say. You know what I mean? I mean, a lot of people have content and they're not saying anything, but I think one thing that I like about podcasts and even within just any community is it's able to give people more of a voice. People want to talk, they want to have candid conversations. We haven't, with social media, it's like, I've seen the craziest stuff where people get on Facebook and they meet somebody that's sitting in a chair across, the room, you know what I mean? Off of Facebook, and they're talking to each other like that, you know what I mean? But I think live interaction, is something that, deep down inside innately, like we want to have conversations, you know what I mean? We want to be able to meet new people and stuff. Hence why bars are like really important actually, you know what I mean? And other places where you can, coffee shops now is like, I have like really great coffee shop talks.
Yeah. I went to, I got like another tour tomorrow, WeWork, and I listen to this podcast called How I Built This. It's like my favorite
I love
podcast.
That. Yeah.
Most people don't know about
Guy
that.
Razzie, right?
Oh my gosh. So, WeWork has an episode on there, and that's one of my favorite ones. I just love how they went about it. So, once you learn somebody's story, you kind of start following them a little bit or whatever. So I went to WeWork and I saw what they did, and they created an environment that you just want to be in and want to work in. So I think that's, even with podcasting, coming to like the studio, it creates that environment. This is where I'm going to get this kind of work done. So, sometimes what can slow a person down is the environment. Sometimes you got to get out the house, or get out the studio, like we said, get off of Instagram and get in person with those people, whether it be the coffee shops, the WeWorks. You're going to meet people I'm telling you, it's going to give you ideas that you wouldn't have gotten.
Yeah. And they want to talk. I mean, people want to talk to each other, but there's that, kind of facade that people don't want to talk to each other because they're on their phone. But the phone is honestly an extension of another person realistically like that you're talking to. When you're at the club and nobody's like, talking to you, what do? Pull out your phone because it makes you feel safe. It makes you feel like somebody's talking to you. Yep. And when somebody's looking at you, no longer do you have to be that dude in the club like alone because for some reason
you got your phone. You're not by yourself. So it seems like you got somebody to talk to.
But you really ain't talking to nobody.
No, you just you sending what you doing text to like 3 different people.
Yeah. Waiting for them to respond, But the yearning for like conversation. So I'm glad that you were able to come on the show, man, and like just support one, just being on the show, and then also just give us, your intellect on just the podcasting.
Definitely, man. Definitely. It's been a journey, man. We're doing this I started in 2015, and it's been definitely a journey. I know that we talked a little bit. I don't know if you wanted me to go into that. I don't know.
Yeah.
If you, just to share my story, because everybody has their own story and how we got to this point, and now like we share a little bit. We're working on opening up our 3rd station in Milwaukee, so that's going to be like huge for us.
It's amazing, yeah.
So, but yeah, it started like I said in my room, and 6 months after in my room, I was like, man, I need to get out of here. I had to go get some more experience. And I remember calling one of my friends. I was like, I need a mentor. And back then, it was more I was trying to do radio more so than podcasts, because that's kind of was the medium now was more popular. Podcast, like I said, was just coming in 2015. But I was like, I want to be on the radio. That's what I want to do now. And I need a mentor. So, my friend shot me this number. He was like, I know this guy. He has a radio show, and it's an independent radio station. I can just give you his number. So we ended up talking to him, and he was like, yeah, come on down Tuesday. So I came down to when the show was. Come to find out, he happened to be the owner of the station. He just had a show on there.
Wow.
And my friend was helping manage music. So he had connection with him because he had him on the show. So he still had his number. That's that part. But anyways, so I went down there and I'm like, okay, he's the owner. But now I'm like, I thought I was just talking to somebody who had a show on the station. And we talked and I told him what I was doing. He was like, okay. And I was like, honestly, I know I'm not where I need to be. And I said, but if you let me hang out with you, I'll clean up the studio once a week.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember saying that, and he just looked at me. He was like, show up on Tuesday. And I guess he thought like, maybe I don't know how serious he is. And I showed up on Tuesday. he was like, "Oh, you made it," and I was like, "I'm serious." And he was like, "You ain't gotta clean the studio though." He was like, "Just sit in," and I sat in for a couple times, and then he was like, "You want to get on the mic?" Yes, I do. So,
Wow.
and that mine, I was still doing my
That's
show at the
amazing.
house. So now I end up eventually becoming one of his co-hosts, and then eventually he had two other people that was very popular, and they're still popular to this day. But they end up going to their own thing, and it ended up just being me and him. And I learned a lot from him, and I learned a lot, and I think that's what allowed me to learn what I need to learn when I started the Good News Network. But,
man, that's amazing, man. I mean, I think mentorship is, definitely something that's super important, and definitely something that when it's given to you, like understanding to give it back, And I think you're doing that with the Good News podcast, in a sense that, one, I love the idea of you giving everybody books and showing them like, hey, you need to be knowledgeable on this, you know what I mean? And this is more than, you take it serious. It's more than just a podcast. This is people's lives. You know what I mean? In
podcast conferences, like I sent them like, "Hey, I signed up for this conference. Who want to go?" And I sent it to the whole network. So I sent all the personalities. Sign up for this conference. We signed up for one today. I was like, "Hey, VIP ticket $100. You ain't got to go, but it's good. I'm going."
Yeah.
So always offering as well, like, and like I said, I'm learning how to be an even better leader. So I can't even say it's like I know what to do. It's just I'm learning through the process too. But I'm intentionally trying to be better every day. So I'm looking at what can I do to get better? How can I improve?
No, that's great, man.
So, it's been cool working with, I know you want me to bring up Dr. Drew a little bit. So I had the opportunity to be Dr. Drew's assistant producer for some time. And that came in a weird situation because it's funny, me and Michael actually met at work, kind of. We were both substitute teachers. And
wow.
I remember telling him, like, he knew but I started the Good News now after coming out of my bedroom. I built a little studio in my dad's basically basement. And that's where the Good News started. Before it wasn't even called the Good News, But I built the Good News down in my dad's basement kind of. And that's where it was all, going from. But I remember I was working every day and I was like, I need to get paid to learn. Like, now I'm learning and I'm doing a lot of things, but I need to get paid to learn this radio stuff because, I got a kid. Like, I'm doing a lot of free stuff. Like, I need to get paid.
Yeah.
So I said, I need to get a job in a radio station. So I went up to, man, I'm telling you, I drove up to every single radio station that I could think of in the LA area. For it's KJLH, I went up to the Steve Harvey Show. I went up to iHeart. I went up to, where else did I go? I went up to, I'm about to say Premium. It's not Premium. I forgot the other companies, but I was driving everywhere.
Yeah.
And I was trying to submit applications in person because I'm like, I'm going to make myself different than everybody else. I'm going to go in person. I'm not just going to do it online. And then you get there and what they tell you. Oh, yeah, you got to apply online,
Get about it.
Right, you go and apply online. Yeah. But I just wanted to meet, and I was like, okay, cool. Well, can I meet the person who's in charge? I was just trying to do it. Long story short, I got hired at Cumulus Media, which, if you guys not familiar with, they actually own KLOS 95.5, which is like, if you watch Wayne's World back in the day, it was all over that movie. So they were like classic rock and roll. And then they also own KABC, which was is also known for, its long time being on the air, which, Dr. Drew, Jillian Barberie, a bunch of other, famous people that's been on TV. But I was hired to be the security guard on the weekend.
Oh, wow.
And, just to sit there and let people in the building because they didn't have nobody on the weekend. And when I was in there, I was like, hey, they was like, you think you can help us edit a few things? Yes, I can. So they taught me how to edit at that job.
Wow.
So I got paid to learn how to edit. I got paid to learn how to do commercials and air checks and learn how the advertisement industry worked. And then I was doing so much on my own. I would wear my Good News stuff every day to work, And mind you, I'm still doing this and it's just one show. It's not network yet. It's just me and, a couple people and Jackie, and I'm still branding myself because I understood it. And they was like, so you do like your own production and stuff? And I was like, yeah. And it's like a year later, they're like, we need help over in the production side.
Wow.
I was like, I'll be there. And I'm over there. And mind you, on the weekends, I was going over there and learning how to work the board when I was supposed to be at the front desk. But I would ask them to teach me, in downtime. So I had already knew how to do it. And that, just spent off to me working with Dr. Drew. And Yeah, and that was a good time. I learned a lot from Dr. Drew.
Wow, that's
I learned a lot from
amazing.
Dr. Drew.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just starting in the industry and getting prepared for what you have now. You know what I mean? Which I think is important is and so we're gonna go to my favorite part of the hype hour, which is the hype moment.
All right.
Right. And so the hype moment, I do a lot of crazy stuff. So this is the first time that we're gonna do this live.
All right.
So I'm gonna ask you a few questions. So the first question is, what do people not know about the Good News? What do you feel like people don't know about it?
I feel like people are still starting to realize that we have 2 stations. So we are a network. When I tell people we're a network, that means if you think of any network, that means it's multiple things connected. We have 2 stations right now, which is the Good News Talk and the Good News Sports. And we are planning to open up more stations under the Good News name. Like I mentioned, the Good News Milwaukee. We have plans for the Good News Espanol. We have plans to really take over every single aspect of radio and podcast. What also people I think don't know is that we offer what we do is something that's not being done anywhere. We're live podcasts. So what I mean by live podcast, which is an oxymoron, but who cares? Nobody's invented it. So we're the only place you can go where you can actually interact with your favorite podcast live. Most podcasts you got to wait to listen to later. You can't call into your favorite podcast. You can't chat with them while they're actually recording. You can't do that. We offer that opportunity for listeners. So for the listener, it's a different experience when you're listening to your podcast. And for the podcaster, it's also providing them that live experience that they wish everybody kind of really wants.
Yeah.
And that interaction with the listeners, what it does, that creates fans. Because now nothing sounds better than a person that supports you than hear their name over the air. Hands down. They'll listen every week. Mm-hmm. Because now they have become a part of the show. And if they're a consistent listener, every week, we got such and such back. They've never been seen, but they feel famous in their own mind because they're hearing their name over the air, and they, there's hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of people listening to you. So I think that we give that to not only the listener, but we also give that experience to our network shows. Yeah. And then you can go back and listen whenever you want to. Also, we have our own platform. We're an independent platform. So majority of the shows you can't find nowhere else. You're going to only find them right here on the Good News. You download our app. You have access to chat with every live show. You have access to call in to every live show. You have access to interact with every live show. You have access to listen to a live or a podcast. So if you did miss it and you didn't catch it live, you're not at a loss. Just like you listen to your favorite podcast, you listen to your favorite podcast on the Good News. So I think those are some things that people really don't understand fully because it may have to be explained that way. But I think that people are catching on. I mean, obviously people are catching on because we have a lot of listeners. But I think for people who don't know, I think that they're starting to realize what's happening.
Oh, that's amazing, man. That's amazing. So where can we find you, and just give us your socials? And
at the Good News Radio, follows at the Good News Radio, follows at the Good News Sports. And that's the best place to find everything on Instagram. And like I said, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised at how we flood the city with our new campaign that we're going on.
Let's go.
So people are going to see us everywhere, and I think it's going to be hard to miss us.
Dope. Man, thanks so much for being on the show, man. I appreciate it, bro.
Thank you, man. Yeah, hype hour, baby.
Nice.